How's it rockin', Dween Nation? This is the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. I would like to apologize at the top of the episode. I got a new job. We haven't been as on it as per usual, but we've been on TikTok. We've been grinding on the TikToks because they're a little quicker. But we got this time now talking about divisional round of the NFL playoffs, which is heading this way. But we're going to discuss kind of what happened throughout Wild Card Weekend because some big things happened. The AFC bracket is set for round two. The NFC, we're missing one game, which is by the time you're watching this today, there's a football game with the Vikings and the Rams. And that has big implications because the winner will play the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm excited to discuss, and I watched all games that happened this weekend thus far. And they've mostly been not super close affairs besides this Tampa Bay Washington doink for the W victory from Zane Gonzalez for the Commanders. But before we dive into all these games and what it means going forward, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Not to mention how we kicked off Wild Card Weekend in Houston with
Wow.
my beloved Texans keeping their season alive. That has me feeling good, but just for another day or two, because then, Justin, we got to get ready for the reigning champions, which we'll talk about later this week. But for right now, we'll kind of go down to Wild Card. But Justin, the playoffs are here. The road to the Super Bowl is underway, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting blessed as sports fans going from the college football playoffs, which was a tremendous weekend of that too, with Ohio State moving on and Notre Dame moving on. We'll have an episode during this week that we will discuss the ins and out of that game, who we think is going to win. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's dive into these wild card games and how it's setting up. And I'll go off of what you just said. What started off wild card weekend, this team right here in the Houston Texans. There was really not a lot of positivity and hope for Houston as they have been playing very poorly over the last month and a half, and essentially this year has been an underwhelming offensive outpour. And going into this game, the Chargers have been on it, and so we were thinking that this might be a trouble spot for Houston, but they dominated the Chargers. Obviously, through the first 20 minutes, it was Chargers football. They were up 6-0, but then right before half, they got a touchdown. The Texans got a touchdown and then a field goal, and then from there it was just they didn't look back, and it was surprising to see, but awesome. You see how important Nico and Joe Mixon are to this offense, especially Nico Collins. He was everywhere for Houston. He's going to be kind of if he does well, Houston will be in these games. As for Joe Mixon, him as well, even though he started off slow in that game and then he picked it up, ended up getting over 100 and a touchdown. But Houston sets up for the Chiefs next week, and that's going to be an exciting matchup. They did match up earlier, like a month ago, and the Chiefs got the better of Houston, but not by too much. So that has me interested in this game. And then just to discuss a little bit about the losers, the Chargers. Herbert had his worst game of his career, you could argue. 4 interceptions in this game when he only had 3 all season. So either he just had a bad day or Houston's defense and D'Amico Ryans' play call really set them up well. It kind of gave me deja vu, though, to last year when the Cleveland Browns were on fire with Joe Flacco at the end of the season. And Houston, they came back and they won their division. But people were kind of doubting Houston because, hey, Cleveland's got this vet presence and their offense is going great. Their defense has been really good. And then what ended up happening was how good the Texans defense was. Remember, they had that pick 6 from Christian Harris. They had another couple turnovers. And that's kind of the story of this game was. But what are your thoughts with this game in its entirety?
Well, Justin, first of all, it kind of takes me back to when we were in the draft process this year, and we were doing mock drafts, and we were kind of saying, who should the Chargers pick? And I remember kind of saying the Chargers have got to go and get Malik Neighbors, and I think that kind of showed. I think the Chargers still could have ended up getting Lad McConkey where he was drafted, but I think instead of Joe Alt there, I know he's a great tackle, phenomenal. I think out of Notre Dame. I still think they should have picked Malik Neighbors. I
Double
think he
down.
would have been much he would have been much of a difference maker there, Justin. I mean, Malik Neighbors had a great, last 2 to 3 games of the season with Drew Lock and like Tommy DeVito, after Daniel Jones got released. And so I feel like that was the big factor here, that Herbert doesn't really have much to work with there. Outside of Ladd McConkey, I think Joshua Palmer did miss this game. Quentin Johnson, I believe, didn't even have a catch. He had a couple drop passes, especially on fourth down late in the game. Will Disley had a couple catches, but even then he had some key drops and wasn't really a non-factor. And then we haven't really heard much of with DJ Chark and whoever. So J.K. Dobbins was also kept in check. And so, real quick, as we, before I get into my Texans, we won't really be talking about much about the Chargers until maybe draft, free agency. But one last time on the Chargers, they really need to add some talent there. Their defense is very, very solid, I believe. Harbaugh has always had a pretty solid defense when he was in San Francisco, whenever he was in Michigan in college. And so I think that now going forward, the Chargers are just like an offense away. Like they need to get a receiver. Hey, T. Higgins might be, out of Cincinnati. Go ahead and get him. There's a couple wide receivers that you can go for in this draft. Go ahead and get Herbert some targets, because I feel like the lack of targets was how my Texans were able to play defense. Going across to the Texans there, I was very happy as a Texans fan from what I saw from C.J. Stroud. He had a really abysmal first quarter. But then, Justin, something changed mid-second quarter. It was that drive right before halftime. He had a bobble snap on third down, right to the right. He completed a bomb to Xavier Hutchinson, I believe, right across the 50. And that sparked us for the rest of the game. And defense was absolutely ferocious, getting to Herbert, sacking him, getting 4 picks. I mean, this defense, we're going to need to rely, the term defense wins championships. We're gonna need to rely on them all the way if we want to make it and win the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And because Justin, if we gotta play Kansas City, and then we're gonna have to play the winner of Baltimore and Buffalo. That's an MVP candidate quarterback we're potentially facing. And Justin, we're gonna be potentially facing 3 out of the last 3 MVPs, right? If Josh Allen were to win MVP, Lamar has one, and then Mahomes won it the year before. So we got to go through potentially 2 MVPs to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's crazy to see what Houston is tasked up against. You got the Chiefs, obviously, which the Chiefs have been like the demons, the dads to the Texans over the years. We can't get past the Chiefs. We couldn't get past the Patriots. And of recent note, the same with the Ravens. And we're going to have to probably go against 2 of them unless the Bills pull it off. But yeah, Houston, they impressed me because I was not expecting a game like this one. Can they keep that magic against the Chiefs, who the Chiefs got an extra week to prepare? I won't prep it that way. But I'm glad that they got this one victory. As for the Chargers, one last thing. I do see your point with getting Neighbors. I think the alt pick still worked out because he was good this year. And they're happy they got themselves Ladd McConkey. I think what they need to do next year is they need that running back. I know Dobbins was really solid this year, but injuries plagued him. Injuries plagued Gus Edwards. You need that guy. I don't know who, if you want to go into the draft. If you want to go big and get Genty, I know he wants to go to the Cowboys, but something big, a real workhorse, I think is what they need on offense. But enough of this game. Houston, great win there. And they play the Chiefs in Arrowhead next week. As for the next game that happened on the AFC slate, we probably won't dive into it as much because it was, as much as it was a 2-score victory for the Ravens, they dominated this game. It was Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson had a very good game. Bateman got in the end zone. But the real story is what does Pittsburgh do? I feel like this is the same story every season. They lose in the first round. But, Mike Tomlin's this great coach and everything because, hey, he made the playoffs. He got an above 500 record. But is it not the worst position to be in? You're never going to win a championship. You're always stuck where you don't find those major franchise pieces. But yeah, what are your thoughts with the Steelers heading forward and how the Ravens look?
Yeah, Justin, I actually saw this little joke today that the Steelers are never bad enough to pick in top 5 to get a top 5 quarterback in the draft, but then they're never good enough to be competing for a Super Bowl with a top quarterback, so they're kind of just stuck in mediocrity.
Yeah.
Which, I think with the Steelers, they're just getting closer. I understand. You got to look at the teams they had in the past, which is why they lost in the wild card. Post Ben Roethlisberger, they've had some pretty doozy teams with Kenny Pickett. And going forward, though, to answer your question, I do believe that they should kind of keep the similar set, right? You have Russell Wilson, who is probably going to be out of the league in the next 2 to 3 years potentially. So I'd say let's go one more full year with Russell Wilson. Let's go ahead and keep Justin Fields as a backup, and let's just run it back. At one point this team was 10-3, looking like they were heading for the first seed, looking like they were going to win the division. They were going to dethrone the Ravens. They beat the Ravens, right?
Yeah.
And at home, and so I would say this: just run it back, right? Just run it back with Russell Wilson. See what you got with him. Maybe draft another receiver. I'm not really sure if Pickens is happy with what's going on. You still got a solid tight end in Pat Fryermuth. You got a decent defense, a really solid defense. You got T.J. Watt there, and you got Mike Tomlin, who's one of the most experienced coaches. Possibly, you can make the argument he is the most, outside of Andy Reid and maybe Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, that he is the most experienced head coach in the league. And so, you just keep it together. You run it one more year. You got to remember, before the season started, it was Fields as the starter, right? Russell Wilson started the first couple weeks hurt, and then he started playing well when he started, and he kind of went back. Let's start the full year at Russell,
Yeah.
and if next year we don't win a playoff game or two, we don't even get to the AFC Championship, then I would say we have questions to answer from there.
Okay, and Pickens obviously has been a seemingly a cancer on and off the field. I don't know if he's a piece that needs to stay or needs to go, but regardless, with or without him, they need to add multiple wide receivers, I think, to this room. I know they drafted Roman Wilson in the second, but he was injured just about all year.
Mhm.
And then they have a bunch of old players like Mike Williams on the team and Van Jefferson. Those aren't going to do anything. They obviously also have Najee Harris as a free agent this offseason, so they could have a new running back in the room. I know Jalen Warren's obviously still there, but I think if I'm Steelers ownership, I'm moving off of Russ. I'm starting from scratch. Like, you need to. I don't think Russ is going to get you a championship. I know you want to be competitive and you want fans to still stay in it. I think you just need to. It's better than being mediocre. It's like you got to find that possibility to strike gold with the franchise guy and get other pieces. So I don't know. I just think that they're going to keep playing this middle ground until ownership is just tired of it and probably fires Tomlin. I could see Tomlin being fired in the next 3 to 4 years if it's just same old, same old. Because I mean, I'm actually curious to see what Steelers fans are feeling like, knowing that this is just the same story they get every year. As for Baltimore, they continue to go. They continue to be a scary team, a team that I think is the favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
With Derrick Henry, he's a monster on the ground. He looked like a cheetah on the field, but he's also like the biggest guy on the field. So he was fast as hell, but also he's huge. And he had 170 and two score or 180 and two scores. He was phenomenal. Lamar's just become such an efficient passer this season, which was the big qualm with him in his career. So I've seen like a stepped up Lamar Jackson. And obviously they have a big test with the Bills next week, but the Ravens, to me, there's like some teams that they match up with better, and I think they match up pretty well against the Bills and like a team like the Lions, but like not the Chiefs. Like, I think the Ravens are going to try to not want to play the Chiefs. Like, they're the biggest Texans fans next week. Obviously, the Ravens wish they could have played another team than the Bills, but we saw the Ravens, take it to Buffalo earlier this year. And so I think Baltimore is just on an all-time high, and they didn't even have Zay Flowers this week. So I'm super excited for the Bills, and I'll jump to this since they're playing each other. Let's talk about that Bills game real quick against the Broncos, where the Bills, obviously the Broncos scored first with Troy Franklin, first ever rookie to rookie touchdown. And I was like, wait a minute, is this going to be an upset and Josh Allen gets spoiled? But no, Buffalo just stormed back and dominated, and they didn't even look back, and it was crazy. But I'm curious. I know we're going to really dive into it more on Wednesday, but the way both those teams, the Ravens and the Bills, dominated, what do you look for in this like brawl that's going to happen next weekend?
Well, Justin, where do we even, get into? First of all, I want to say this game right here is for the MVP.
Yeah.
It was for the MVP. I was telling my brother today, Jess, this game's for the MVP. They might as well bring the MVP before coin toss, put in the center of the Bills logo on the 50-yard line, bring Lamar and his, team captains, bring Josh Allen and his team captains, and say, hey, This is for the MVP, gentlemen. Good luck. And then go ahead and proceed to flip the coin and then figure out who's getting the ball first. That's one thing. Second thing, what I'm looking for, Justin, I'm looking at for the Bills side, there needs to be some action from the wide receivers here, right? I mean, looking at today's game with how they were able to perform, it was pretty good, right? I mean, the Bills were able to do enough. But looking at what the Bills contributed as far as wide receivers, Curtis Samuel, right? I liked Curtis Samuel when they signed him. I believe was it last year or was it beginning? I think Curtis Samuel
Is this your first year?
was this year. Yeah, I remember we had talked about him. I said he was a sleeper. Finally, he had a great catch for 55 and a score there at 68 total, but he had a 55-yard touchdown. Khalil Shakur had 60 yards, but I'm going to need something out of Amari Cooper. I mean, 2 catches for 8 yards isn't going to do it against Baltimore, as well as their rookie Keon Coleman. I think one of their receivers absolutely needs to go over 100 and a score. Has to. If it's Khalil, Curtis, Amari, it don't matter. Even if it's Kincaid, who, my goodness, Justin, has been one of the biggest disappointments all over football. I mean, in Kincaid, we thought he was going to be good this year. A former first-round pick, you know what I'm saying? And so one of the receivers is going to need to hit 100 because, Justin, this Baltimore offense, it's scary. It's absolutely scary. Luckily, the ice can simmer down the fire just a little bit because they are going to be on the road in Buffalo. But I want to say one thing before I get into Baltimore. I think Derrick Henry is a top 7 running back of all time in NFL history. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. He's got playoff wins. He's got rushing. He's got records. He's got touchdown runs outside of 90 yards, nearly hitting 100 yards. He's got multiple. I mean, this guy's one of the best running backs of all time. He's got an Offensive Player of the Year award on his belt. He's been very durable outside. I think it was 2021. It was like the only season he was knick-knacked up. But other than that, one of the most consistent running backs from high school to college to the NFL. That's one thing, right? I think that's what's going to need to happen here because they are in Buffalo. And I feel like Lamar's going to want to force a lot of passes, right, to his guys. Andrews is hot right now. Bateman is hot right now, who scored a touchdown. And the rushing ability of Lamar, I think for them to win this game, Justin, let's give Derrick Henry 20, 25, 30 carries this game. Because if we were to play Kansas City and Houston in the AFC Championship, I think Lamar's able to have his way because they could potentially be hosting Houston or go to Kansas City where, that's where they started week 1. And Lamar was able to kind of do things all himself. Derrick Henry didn't do anything crazy. So I think this is the game, these playoffs, that they're going to need to rely on Derrick Henry. Give him 30, 35 carries. And I think that's going to be able to open the play action, get it to Andrews, give it to Bateman. If Zay Flowers does come back for this game, and that's another target for them. And so I really, really feel strongly that the Ravens have got to feed Derrick Henry. For Buffalo, they have got to find a 100-yard receiver. They have got to move the chains, move the football. This is going to be an absolute showdown. It's one of those Western, films where the Cowboys got the pistols. Yeah, and they're like, ready? It's going to be a showdown. This is for the MVP. I think that all NFL MVP voters should vote for whoever wins. Right now, one last thing. If both quarterbacks have phenomenal games and it's a shootout, well, then I guess you got to flip a coin and see how, the regular season, measure up the regular season matchup, which was a 35-10 victory for the Ravens, and then measure it kind of in this playoff game, kind of average it all up and throw it up in the air. That's how I feel like you should kind of dictate this MVP. But I'm very excited for this matchup, Justin. Thankfully, this is Sunday night, the final match of the divisional roundup. And, man, what a battle this is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's funny with the talk. I feel like Derrick Henry, every year for the past 5 years, people are like, yeah, he's kind of old, and yeah, I think he's going to hit his cliff. Like, it's just not going to happen for him, and he just continues to do it. And that's why I'm excited that I think Baltimore's just going to run. I think that is their key to the game. Like, run it with Derrick, keep it out of Josh Allen's hands. I agree. Lamar, like a Lamar A+ game is going to happen against the Chiefs or the Texans. Like, he fits that game more than this one coming up.
I will say, Justin, I want to add one last thing. Whoever loses this game, there's going to be some off-season discussions. Whoever loses game, and I see it more for Buffalo. If Buffalo were to lose this game, Justin, I want to say that the higher ups for the Bills are going to be looking at their coaching staff. And they're going to be like, wow, we, again, lost in the divisional roundup.
Right.
This year to Lamar. last year to Mahomes, 2 years ago to Joe Burrow, and there's gonna be Justin also, all three of them were home games for the Bills. So I just want to put that out there that if Buffalo were to lose this game, we might see a new head coach for the Bills next year. It's 50-50 for me, in my opinion, as well as outside of Josh Allen, of course. There could be a huge potential roster shakeup where I see the Bills absolutely swinging for any kind of top offensive talent, as well as a defensive talent as well. And if the Ravens were to lose, I wouldn't say that they get rid of Harbaugh, or obviously they're not doing anything with Lamar. He's signed there for a little bit, but I don't know. Something could happen there too. Maybe a coordinating change of some sort. I don't know, because you got Derrick Henry, and this was probably one of Lamar's best offensive seasons. So there's going to be some chatter for whoever loses this game.
I honestly, I think that this game, both teams are going to do really great. And I actually would be more worried that at the end of this game, it's going to be 38-35, something crazy like that. I think that multiple touchdowns will be scored on each side. Both offensive coordinators, I think, might be leaving for head coaching gigs. Todd Monken, since he's joined the Ravens, Lamar's had an MVP season and just about an MVP season. And Joe Brady has been super good. Remember last year, they were struggling. They fired their OC. Joe Brady steps in, and then Josh Allen and them go on a huge run into the playoffs. They do lose. But then this year, they lose Diggs and Davis, and they're like, man, this offense might take a step back, and they took a step forward. So I think that I think safety for like their positions are there unless they choose to leave. But this game's going to be exciting. And then before we wrap up this episode, we talked about the losers. Let's talk about that loser of that last game with the Broncos. They had a phenomenal year. We did not have high expectations, especially an old quarterback coming into the league where the Broncos team had been struggling. I think we picked them to have like 3 or 4 wins. It was pretty. If you watched that episode too, we were laughing, making jokes, but we stand corrected because the Broncos stepped up this season, not in this game in particular, but going forward, bring in a couple more wideouts, bring in another running back. They need a better running backs. They had a plethora of average guys. Their defense was super solid, but I think they need a couple more pieces surrounded around Pat Surtain. But overall, a super good season. They jumped way ahead of schedule from where I thought they'd be at the end of this year. But what are your thoughts with the Broncos?
Yeah, Justin, absolutely over exceeded expectations. I did have them picking like second or third overall. I did get the Giants and the Titans kind of being at the bottom tier, but not the Broncos. They proved me wrong. They were able to make the playoffs. Justin, one last thing. I wish it was Cincinnati in this game, but then again, my Texans would possibly be going to Baltimore if that were the case. Who knows? So thankful for that. But here's the thing, Justin. I think that this offseason is going to be the offseason of the wide receiver, not to mention we're going to have a wide receiver pick in the first 3 picks in this draft. And so with the Broncos, they're definitely going to need to get a wide receiver, and they're going to need to trade Javonte Williams. I think Estimate is the guy, is the new workhorse for the Broncos. He had the last couple games, he was getting touches. He had some flashes. We liked him out of Notre Dame, and so I think he's a guy going forward that they should move off Javonte Williams. Definitely get a tight end, right? Do what your divisional rivals did, right? They the Raiders went and got Brock Bowers. Obviously, with the Chiefs, they got Kelsey, but even Gray has been doing really good in the past couple weeks. And so definitely get a tight end. The defense really solid. I think nothing needs to change there. Just add pieces. Obviously, you'll probably have some losses, as all teams will. But let's go ahead and address the running back situation. The running game for Denver was so boring this year. I mean, my goodness. I mean, let's add some flavor. You got Cortland Sutton there. Let's get a tight end. Let's address the running back. Let's develop, right? We like Troy Franklin. I like Marvin Mims. Let's get them. Let's figure out a way to get them a lot of touches going into next year.
Yeah, and I like that tight end idea because we know that Sean Payton's got the history with tight ends and Jimmy Graham. So I that would be super nice to scoop somebody up. There are Gunnar Helm, Tyler Warren from Penn State and Texas respectively. Like those two players are going to be top picks in the first couple of rounds of the draft next season. Why not scoop one up to kind of add another pass catcher for Bo Nix, who had a rookie of the year campaign. He's not going to win it from Jaden Daniels.
No.
As you can see, Jaden Daniels has been phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But in just about any other year, Bo Nix would deserve it. But yeah, so we got the Broncos and AFC losing, and the Chargers lost, and the Steelers lost, and that sets up Texans at Chiefs on Saturday, and Ravens at Bills on Sunday night. We will discuss those more in depth later in the week. This is more of a reaction to Wild Card Weekend. But thank you guys for listening. We're gonna have an NFC episode, so this is strictly AFC. If you're like, where are my Eagles talk? Where are my, Commanders? The Doink W, or I'm sad my Tampa team lost. We will discuss all that in our next episode, so just stay tuned. Thank you guys for listening, and Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dwayne Nation, this was our AFC wild card recap and thoughts after the game. We're on the road to the Super Bowl, so check out our NFC video as Justin mentioned. We're so excited for how this playoffs are going to end up leading to the Super Bowl and who's going to win. One of the best times of the year, no doubt. So Dwayne Nation, thanks for watching. We love you guys, and as always, peace.
Peace.